I look like a doofus wearing it like this, but he looks very cool, I promise. My right hand, despite being my dominant hand, is so uncoordinated when it comes to knitting, will definitely 100% be used for as long as I frickin' can. Hi everybody, my name is Alex, and on this channel I talk about all things knitting and crochet. This is going to be podcast episode 5, and I think it's probably been 6 weeks since my last podcast episode, so I'm sorry about that. But also, like I said in my last episode, I think I'm only going to sit down to record when I feel inspired to talk about everything that I've been making. And boy, have I been making a lot in the last 6 weeks. Mostly accessories, mostly gift knits. So yeah, I'm going to talk about all of that in this episode. I'll start with my finished objects, then move to my works in progress, and end with my acquisitions / future plans. This is a slightly new setup for me. I'm recording in my childhood bedroom. Because I moved home. I'm actually living in the apartment downstairs, but just quieter up here, and I feel like there'll be less interruptions if I film in my room right now. My mom has officially converted this into a guest room, which is pretty crazy that I'm at that stage in life where my childhood bedroom is no longer my bedroom. It's now a guest room. Hopefully the audio is okay. I've ditched my microphone because it's just such a hassle, and I feel like the audio quality wasn't even that good. So if you record any video, or you have a podcast, or you use microphones for anything and you have one that you'd recommend, please let me know what you'd recommend. Let's start with what I'm wearing. So I'm wearing my Esther sweater. This is a pattern by Petite Knit, and I knit this in Drops Lima in the color Wheat Mix. This was a finished object in my previous podcast, so if you want more details about it, you can go watch that episode. But I love it a lot. I wear it all the time. Definitely one of my favorite knits of this year. Let's get into my finished objects. I have so many, I don't even know how, I don't even want to count them. But the reason that I have so many is because one, most of them are, actually, all of them are accessories, and two, most of them are gift knits. So I was rushing really hard the last month and a half to finish everything. This also isn't going to be chronological in terms of when I finish them, just in terms of when I remember to talk about them. So the first thing that I knit and gifted was a scarf for my aunt. I knit the Sophie scarf, actually, by Petite Knit, but I did a very heavily modified version. I knit it in, I'm forgetting the name of the yarn, but it's an acrylic yarn from Michaels, and it's just super, super soft, and it has color blocks. I knit the scarf much longer and much wider than the pattern says to, because I was trying to get somewhere in between a Sophie scarf and a Sophie shawl, but I didn't want to buy both patterns, so I only bought the Sophie scarf pattern and then just heavily modified it. And now I've seen a couple other people talk about the fact that they've done similar things with the Sophie shawl pattern, so I really feel like you don't need to buy both patterns. You can get away with buying one pattern and modifying it to get whatever sized shawl you want to get. I bought the Sophie scarf pattern, and I decided to increase at a faster rate than the pattern told me to, so that it turned into a, the triangle widened quicker. I read the pattern wrong and I thought that you were supposed to increase, you increase on, if the fabric has two sides, you increase on this side, and then the next time you increase on this side, and then this side and this side, and you alternate back and forth. But after finishing the scarf and then reading it again, I realized you actually always increase on the same side of the fabric. So one side of the shawl is, or one side of the scarf is straight, and the other side makes this triangle rounded shape. But I increased on both sides. And then once I got to a thickness that I liked, I just knit straight. So it kind of went like this, where it opened up quicker, and then I just knit a really long straight portion, and then I decreased it at the end. I think I played quite an impressive game of yarn chicken with this one. I had this much yarn left over at the end. I was pretty proud of myself for estimating the yarn quantities. And then I gave it to my aunt. She lives in Colorado, where it's pretty cold. For most of the other people that I have been making gifts for, I've been knitting them hats, but she has beautiful big curly hair, and I've actually never seen her wear a beanie, so I thought I needed to knit her something else that could be used for warm weather but wouldn't be a hat. And this Sophie scarf shawl thing is actually the perfect thing that I could have made her, because it can be a nice little scarf, but then it could also be a balaclava type situation where you put it up over your head if you need more coverage on your head. And she sent me this awesome photo of her wearing it as a headband. So I feel like it's kind of like a thneed. I don't know if any of you ever read The Lorax by Dr. Seuss, but a thneed is a piece of a garment that can be so many different things. And I actually already bought more of the exact same yarn to knit myself and my mom another version of the scarf, because we both loved it so much. This will happen in the new year, because yeah, I've been knitting a lot of other gifts for a lot of other people for the holidays, and that kind of got pushed off to the side. Another thing that I gifted was to my uncle, and he got an Oslo hat, which actually I think I talked about that Oslo hat in my last podcast episode. It was the green Oslo hat that I originally was going to knit for Max's brother, but I ended up giving it to my uncle instead because I wanted to give him a hat and I already had it made and I was going to see him before I saw Max's brother. So I gave him that one. He loves it so much. I've been told that he's wearing it a lot, which makes me very happy. Let's move on to the finished objects that I actually have to show you, which is exciting. Like I mentioned, I've been making Oslo hats for everybody for the holidays. And this is an Oslo hat that I knit for Max's dad, which he was the one who initiated my whole Oslo hat obsession. Last year, I was with Max and we were visiting his family. And Max was wearing one of his crocheted hats that I had made him at the time. At the time, I hadn't started knitting yet. And his dad looked at the hat and was like, oh my goodness, I would love a merino wool beanie. Not specifically asking me for one, but I just know that he'll appreciate it so much. So yeah, he was the reason that I decided to search for like the perfect beanie pattern to gift people, and he's the reason that I landed on the Oslo hat because it's like the perfect classic beanie that I think everybody will get so much use out of. I knit this in Malabrigo Rios, which everybody told me is the softest superwash merino yarn. I really wanted to make sure that this was actually merino wool because that was his specific request, was merino wool beanie. And I knit it in I forget which color I knit it in, but I will make sure to insert it on the screen so you know. But it's a little variegated. It's black. Okay, I'm editing this right now and the colors got all messed up for some reason. So I'll insert photos of the actual color of things so you know what they actually look like, because this beanie looks blue in this clip, but I promise it's not. I promise it's black gray-ish. I don't know why that happened. It has like speckles of gray and purple and blue, and it's like the most perfect classic stockinette beanie. I have knit so many Oslo hats. I love this pattern so much. Cannot recommend it enough. I think the pattern cost me like what, $6, and I have knit 6 or 7 Oslo hats, so I definitely got my money's worth, and it's a pattern that I'm just going to be using forever. I don't even need to look at the pattern at this point. Like I can just make them. My next finished object was another Oslo hat for Max's sister-in-law, and I knit this in Drops Merino Extra Fine in this navy blue color. It's actually like a vibrant navy blue, and I really, really, really love this blue. It's just like the perfect beanie. And I prefer beanies that don't have a lot of room on the top. So I knit my Oslo hats a little bit shorter than Petite Knit recommends in her pattern. I think I knit it 3/4 of an inch shorter than it says to before starting the crown decreases. And I feel like it gives a perfect snug fitting beanie on the top of your head. Look at those crown decreases. I feel like I'm getting so good with my 7th Oslo hat. Yeah, I love this pattern a lot. My next finished object is the Staffen shawl by Rebecca of the Crochet. This is a recently released pattern. Am I holding it the right way? Oops, holding it backwards. This is a recently released pattern that Rebecca just released, I think like a couple weeks ago. And all of the proceeds from this pattern go to some really awesome foundation. I'm forgetting exactly what the foundation is, but I will make sure to insert it somewhere. I knit this for Max's grandmother. She was the first and only person actually to specifically request something from me to be hand knit, and she requested this in June. It has been so long in the making. I think actually if you watch podcast episode 3, I was knitting another shawl in the same yarn because that's the shawl that she picked out. She has some specific requirements. First, she wants it to be little, which is why this shawl is so little. Thankfully, Rebecca's pattern, this Staffen shawl comes in 3 sizes, and this is the smallest size, and it was the perfect size, which is why I decided to eventually go with this pattern. But before this, I think I was knitting the Cowboys and Angels shawl, and I was just planning to modify it to make it smaller. The reason that she wants this shawl is to just lay over her shoulders like this. She doesn't want it to be like a blanket. She doesn't want it to be a scarf. She just gets cold on the top of the back of her neck. So she just wants like a tiny little thing to throw over her to keep her a little warm. And the Cowboys and Angels shawl starts with a lot of lace. So I was worried that it wasn't gonna be warm enough, but this is no lace. It's all different sections of 2x2 rib and then some garter stitch and then some knit pearl texture to create these diamonds, and you alternate that until you get to the end. I did Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off at the end just to keep the 2x2 rib nice and stretchy, but I have also seen a lot of people use I-cord to finish it off, and I kind of wish that I had done that because the I-cord just makes the finishing look so neat. I feel like the rib, because, well, I mean, after it's blocked, it's now laying okay, but yeah, I kind of wish that I had finished it off with an I-cord. Maybe I should talk about the yarn. So this is Brand Heartland in the color Canyonlands, and it's a 100% acrylic yarn. And the reason that I chose an acrylic yarn is because, one, it's a gift knit, so I want to make sure that she can wash it without worrying about it felting or shrinking or anything, because I really think that ease of care of hand knits is just as important as them using the finished object. Like, if you're afraid to get something dirty because you don't know how to wash it, then you're never going to wear it or use it. So I really like to be able to tell somebody that, yeah, this can go in the washing machine and the dryer. Also, she's pretty sensitive to wool, like me, and she really didn't want it to be itchy. So this is a very soft acrylic yarn. She picked it out. She told me that she liked it. She chose this color. So yeah, I'm super, super happy with this finished object. One note about the pattern, which I actually posted a TikTok about this and Rebecca saw it. And I feel a little bit better about the fact that I made this modification because she saw it and laughed at my modification. No shade to the pattern at all. The pattern is amazing. This is purely because I hate purling. In between each section, there's a couple rows of garter stitch. One of the sections has these little faux baubles, and you need to be on the right side of the project when you're doing those baubles. And in order to be on the right side, the way the pattern lines up, you end up purling the 3 rows of garter stitch, which was okay for me until I got to about here in the shawl. And then, because it's a shawl, the rows keep getting longer and longer and longer, and I just couldn't do it on the purl row. It was making it not nearly as fun for me, especially knowing that I could accomplish the same look by knitting all of the stitches instead of purling all of them. So what I ended up doing was cutting the yarn and then pulling my needles through and starting on the other side so that I could knit all of the garter stitch. I realized a little too late that the reason that you don't do that is because of those faux baubles. I ended up doing the second time around of baubles, knitting them on the wrong side instead of the right side. So I just did some finagling to make it look as close to the other baubles as I could manage. It's definitely not exact. However, I'm happy that I did that because it made the knitting process so much more enjoyable for me. I knit this in a day. I think it took me 8 hours to knit the whole thing, 7 or 8 hours. So if you're looking for a pretty quick project, would highly recommend the staff and shawl. Obviously, if you knit the larger sizes, it takes much longer. This was a small size. If I knit one for myself, I would probably knit the size medium because I'd want to wear it as a scarf. I think you could wear this as a scarf. So you can either wear it as that little shawl on your shoulders or like this as a little scarf. Maybe this is actually the perfect size. I think if I were to knit this for myself, or maybe I can do this now, I would add a button in the back because it's kind of the perfect length to fit around your neck. And I have it tied right now in a little, can you do that? I have it tied like just in a little knot, but I feel like that would come undone pretty easily. So maybe I'll add a button so that you can just clasp it closed. I really like it like this actually. Yeah, it's laying much better after I blocked it. It is acrylic. I did wet block it. I haven't steamed it yet. I'll probably steam it if I remember before I give it to the recipient. But yeah, there's my staff and shawl. Now I want to talk about these mittens that I knit for Max's mom. This is a self-drafted pattern. I just made this up because I didn't really want to follow a pattern. I'm pretty picky about how mittens look. I really wanted a ribbed cuff and a stockinette body, and I also really wanted an anatomical thumb where like your thumb goes out to the side. It's not in front of your hand, it goes out like that. So I have knit the, oh my goodness, it's a pattern by Paula Strict. I'm totally blanking on the name. The second thing I ever knit, I made a whole project vlog about it. I feel like it starts with an O. I keep wanting to say Oslo, but that's the Oslo hat, whatever. I'll insert it on the screen, the name of the mittens. So I knit those mittens in March. And then I also knit another mitten that is still, I'm going to consider a whip, even though it's finished because I haven't knit the second one. So I'll show you that in a second. Those are the Alma mittens. And then I felt like I knew enough about mitten construction from those two experiences to be able to knit these. All the stockinette mittens that I saw felt like they were just cinched at the top and it made it bulky or pucker at the top of the mitten here. So in my pattern, I did decreases that prevented that. And then I just did some Kitchener stitch at the top so that it has a more rounded effect as opposed to a point. And I did that on the thumb as well. And then the way that I did the increases makes the thumb scooch that way instead of being like directly in front of the mitten. And I am actually so proud of these increases right here. I love them a lot. I used 3.5 millimeter needles for the ribbing and 4 millimeter needles for the stockinette. Max's mom has much bigger hands than I do, so this is actually too big for me. I think my finger ends like right here. And I'm really hoping that they fit her. Like, I don't really want to mail them to her because I want to be there when I give them to her so I can fix them if they don't fit. Let me talk about the yarn because I love this yarn. I was in the Bay Area. I went into one of the most beautiful yarn stores I've ever been into. It's called Atelier Marin. It's pretty big, amazing selection of all different types of fibers. It was quite expensive, but I was in the Bay Area. I think it's in San Rafael. So I found this, I think it's just superwash wool. It's Jojoland Rhythm. And it's this beautiful, I've learned that this is called fractal yarn, where the different plies are different colors and they twist around each other to give this super cool striping effect. And different parts of the yarn have different fractal colors. So like it goes from purple and blue to purple and green, purple and yellow, yellow and green, and it kind of shifts between those. And I got two 50-gram balls. Each were $11, so I thought that was pretty good for a superwash wool. However, it is more than I'd like to spend. The price of yarn is still surprising to me. It's like more expensive than you'd think. But I figured $22 for a gift was the perfect amount of money to spend. And I did have about this much left over from each ball, so I'm not sure how much this is, but the mittens took less than 100 grams. And I really love that I used two different balls of yarn, but they're the same color, but the colorway shifts differently. So they like match, but they're not matchy-matchy. They're cohesive, if that makes sense. Like, I really love the way that the color shifts on the two mittens. It doesn't have like a name on the label. It's in the color number RS90. I love them a lot. And then one other feature of these mittens is that Max's mom is actually missing the top half of her left thumb. And it was a funny story because it happened hours before I met her for the first time. So Max and I started dating in October 2020, over 4 years ago. And for New Year's from 2020 to 2021 was when I met his mom for the first time. She got her thumb stuck in a car door. Her hand was on the car and then she closed it with her other hand and it chopped off the tip of her left thumb. And then I met her a couple hours later and she was like all drugged up and had a missing tip of her thumb, but she went to the hospital. Everything's okay. All this to say, her left thumb is missing the top half. So I knit the left mitten to reflect that. And this mitten has a shorter thumb than this mitten because I think it's so annoying when there's extra room in the tips of thumbs in a mitten. So I really wanted to make sure they fit her. This is another reason why I really want to be there when I give it to her, because I want to be able to lengthen or shorten anything if they don't fit her. I do think that this might be, I might have overshot it. This might be a little too short, but I don't know. Like, I'm trying to imagine what her hand looks like. It kind of looks like this. Very excited about these mittens. Let me know if you'd like a pattern for these because I could write one. However, there are a million stockinette mittens out there. So I feel like the world doesn't really need another pattern, but if you want one, I will write one. Let's talk about a pattern that I am writing, well, that I have already written actually and is in testing, and that is called the Broad Street Beanie. So another gift that I don't have with me because I already gave it to the recipients were two beanies that I knit my grandparents. My grandparents are really big Eagles fans, Philadelphia Eagles fans. They're originally from Philadelphia. Now they don't live there anymore, but they're huge Eagles fans. And I knit them ribbed beanies, but I wanted to incorporate Eagles colors in a way that wasn't like Eagles. I wanted to knit them an Eagles themed beanie. So I knit them, I'll insert a photo. I knit them these beanies and then I bought little pins off Amazon, like the eagle pins, and pinned them on, and they love them so much. They've been wearing them. Their community has Eagles watch parties because there's lots of people who are from Philadelphia who live where they live now. They wore their beanies to a couple Eagles games and everybody loved them too. Because I love knitting that beanie so much, I decided to write a pattern for it. It's called the Broad Street Beanie because Broad Street is a well-known street in Philadelphia. I wanted it to be like related to the reason that I knit the beanie, but not overly sports or Eagles themed. So thank you to Maya from Not the Worst. I'll tag her. That's her Instagram handle. Make sure to go follow her. She's also one of my test knitters. She recommended that name for the beanie. And then I did a poll on my Instagram story and that's what everybody chose, was the Broad Street Beanie. I really love that name a lot. So thanks, Maya. The whole point of the beanie is that it's whatever color you want it to be, but it has that stripe along the brim. So it's kind of like sporty, but you could omit the stripe and just have a classic ribbed beanie. There's instructions for that too in the pattern. Or one of my testers, Asher, actually didn't do this. So there's 3 colors. A is the main color of the whole hat, B is the outline of the stripe, and then C is the color of the middle of the stripe. And Asher just did colors A and B and kept the middle of the stripe the same as color A. And I love the way that that looks so much. I knit a version like that recently. So you can knit it like the original pattern intended, which can be for a sports team, or it can be not for a sports team if you just like to look at the beanie. Or you can knit it like this, where the main color A and B, and then A, B, A. This is a beanie that I just knit my dad. I knit this in Cascade 220, which is a 100% worsted weight wool yarn. Or you can omit the stripes completely and just knit a classic ribbed beanie. So this was my second sample that I knit myself. This is in Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino, held with a strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair to achieve that worsted weight gauge, because the Heavy Merino is a DK weight yarn. And I absolutely love the little halo that this one's giving. Maybe I'll put this one on. But yeah, the broadsheet beanie is a snug fitting beanie, because like I mentioned before, the Oslo hats, I really like a snug fitting beanie. I don't like a lot of extra room on the top. The crown really sits right on top of your head. It has a nice thick brim, which I also really love. And you can either knit it plain like this with stripes like this. This one's for my dad. I haven't given it to him yet though. Well, I technically gave it to him on the first night of Hanukkah, but then I needed to block it. So now I can actually give it to him. Like I said, I knit this in Cascade 2. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place. These are all the same hats, so I feel like I can talk about them all at the same time. I knit this in Cascade 220, and this is a navy blue color. And then I used Drops Merino Extra Fine for the stripes, because that was the only cream merino wool that I had. I was a little worried because the Drops Merino Extra Fine is a DK weight yarn and this pattern needs a worsted, but because the stripes are so thin and because they're on the outside of the brim, like there's still a whole layer of hat underneath there, it's totally fine. When I blocked this, the Cascade 220, the navy blue, bled a lot. And as I was knitting it, I was thinking, this is gonna bleed. There's no way that this doesn't bleed. This is such a saturated dark color, and it's 100% wool that's not superwash, so I was expecting it to bleed. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised with the way that it dyed the white yarn, because this was like a stark white before, and I wanted a little bit less contrast between the blue and the white. So the blue kind of dyed it a grayish light blue color. It's hard to tell on camera right now, but yeah, I really like the way that it dyed the white yarn. When you do 1x1 rib and you do stripes, you often, well, if you don't do this technique, the colors alternate and the purl bumps show on both sides. So if I unfold this, you can see like where you switch to ribbing, that would be showing on the other side if you didn't do the technique that I explained in this pattern. I am also pretty proud of myself for figuring out how to keep the outside stripe nice and clean and not having those little purl bumps showing through. This pattern is currently in testing, and I'm aiming to have the pattern released by January 10th. So if you wanna knit your own broadsheet beanie, that's when it'll be available. I also knit my brother a broadsheet beanie. This is the broadsheet beanie that's in all of the pattern photos that I then re-knit. He wears his hats like this, sitting on top of his head like that. So he likes it even shorter. So I ripped out the crown and re-knit it for him like this. I look like a doofus wearing it like this, but he looks very cool, I promise. He asked me for a green beanie with a stripe on the brim like over a year ago, and I'm finally delivering. And then one more thing to say about the broadsheet beanie. I knit my mom, so my mom, my brother, and my dad all got broadsheet beanies for Hanukkah. And my mom's, I knit a little bit longer. I knit hers in the same yarn as this shawl, so the Brand Heartland in the color Canyonlands, because she is where I get my sensitivity to wool from. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer. Thanks, Mom. Thanks for that. She is also very sensitive to wool. I knit her an Oslo hat that she can't wear because it's so itchy. I wanted to make sure that she would actually wear a beanie if I knit it for her, and an acrylic yarn is just the best option for that. I knit hers the plain version, like no stripe on the brim. I knit hers a little bit longer so the crown sticks up above her head. So if you like that look, you can totally accomplish that with the broadsheet beanie. You just need to knit a little bit longer than the pattern tells you to before starting the crown decreases. But the way that the crown decreases, you know what? The thing I don't mind a beanie that sticks up above your head. What I don't like is when a beanie is really tight, but it also sticks up above your head. So it like suctions to your head and then you just have a little nipple. I don't know how else just to describe it. You just have a little like tuft on the top and it's not proportional to the size of your head. If you like that look, good for you. I'm not bashing that at all. I'm just saying personally, I don't like that. So this beanie, also, if you just knit it a little bit longer, the way that the crown decreases prevents that from happening. It's like a very gradual. There is the Broad Street beanie. The pattern will be out on January 10th if you would like to make it, which I really hope you do. Pretty quick too. I think I can knit one in 6 or 7 hours. So maybe a weekend, like over 2 days of knitting. It's pretty doable. Sorry, the snow plow is going by. Just wait. I think that is all of my finished objects. I'm probably missing 1 or 2, but if I did, they're an Oslo hat, a Broad Street beanie, or a mitten. That's all I've been knitting. Let's move on to works in progress. I want to start with my alma mittens, and this is maybe a good transition because this one's complete, but I haven't started the second one yet, so it's like a finished object and a whip at the same time. These are the alma mittens, which I was inspired to make these because Florence Miller of Handmade by Florence has knit a couple of them and I absolutely love the way they look. I really wanted to knit a colorwork mitten, but I didn't want it to be overly Christmas. Personally, I don't celebrate Christmas, so I don't know. I just wanted it to be wintry, but not Christmas, if that makes sense. This is my first time doing color work and I really like it. It took me a while to figure out. I knit continental. I couldn't figure out the tension for holding both strands of yarn in my left hand. So then I was knitting continental with the dominant color and going like this. I cannot do the flicking finger thing with my right hand. My right hand, despite being my dominant hand, is so uncoordinated when it comes to knitting. My brain does not compute with my hands. My brain cannot tell my hands to hold onto the yarn and move it around the needles like that. I don't know. If you can do that, I'm mega impressed. I was knitting continental with the dominant color and English with the non-dominant color. And oh my goodness, did it take me a while to figure out. The pattern calls for 3 or 3.5 millimeter needles, depending on what yarn you use, but I wasn't using either of the yarns that was recommended in the pattern. So the gray color is Blue Sky Fibers worsted in charcoal gray, and the cream color is Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the same color as my Broad Street beanie, but I held this with a strand of mohair and this is not with mohair, but the pattern doesn't call for either of those yarns. So I decided to split the difference and I was originally knitting it on 3.25 millimeter needles and I knit to about here, like right above where you put the thumb stitches on hold and trying it on, and I could tell it was too small and my tension wasn't very good and I made a couple of mistakes in the color work, so I frogged the whole thing and started over on 3.5 millimeter needles and it fits me perfectly. I haven't blocked this mitten. I think maybe because I want to block both mittens at the same time. I really love the thumb gusset, like Florence mentioned. This is an anatomical thumb gusset similar to my self-drafted mittens where the thumb like sticks out to the side as opposed to being right in front of your hand. And it's super comfortable. I love the pattern here. I love the 1x1 color work on the palm and then like flowers on the other side. One modification that I made to the chart, and the only modification that I made to the chart, was that these little sections here are crosses like that. And I thought it looked a little too religious for me. I don't even know like what flavor of Christianity that reminds me of. I think it's probably like Greek Orthodox, and the only reason I know that is because Max is Greek, so I know that the Greek Orthodox cross is even on both sides. I didn't want the crosses on my mittens. So I decided to just do the center stitch because I really love how when you just do one stitch in color work, it looks like a little heart. So my little hearts and my flowers on my mittens. And I need to knit the other one. I was inspired to make these because of Woozy by Celine's Magical Mittens Cal. These two mittens are my entry to the Magical Mittens Cal, which Celine from Woozy by Celine, she also has a podcast on YouTube that I love. You should definitely check her out. And the Knitting Swan, they're hosting together. The Cal was through the month of December, so by the time this video comes out, the Cal will probably be very close to being over, if not over. But yeah, I love knitting mittens. They're so much fun. I knit my mittens on magic loop. That's my preferred method of knitting small circumferences. I also knit my beanies, the crown, like on the top. When the circumference gets too small to knit in the round, I knit it in magic loop instead of double pointed needles. I made a little magic loop tutorial because a lot of people said that they get laddering where one needle switches the other needle, but I don't get that. And I think that my method is pretty cool. So I will link my magic loop tutorial if you'd like to watch that, because I feel like my tension, I don't know, my tension's like a little wonky. I'm hoping that stuff will block out. It's my first color work, okay? But my tension on these, which is just stockinette in magic loop, like look at that. No laddering to be seen. My next whip is the beginnings of an Oslo hat This is again in the same green color that as the hat that I gave my uncle, because I'm re-knitting the hat for Max's brother. He's still getting the same hat, just I need to knit it again. And I haven't folded down the brim yet. I'm about 4 inches in, so I have 2 more inches for the way that I like to make my oslo hats before I attach the live stitches to the cast on edge. I think I will forever have an oslo hat on the go. Like the way that people have socks on the go, I will have an oslo hat on the go because they just make the most perfect gift, and it's just stockinette in the round, and it's such an easy pattern to remember. I'm using same yarn that I've used for most of the oslo hats. Oh no, this is a total mess. This is Drops Merino Extra Fine in this is color 52, but it's a classic green. I don't know how else to describe this. It's just like green. What you think of when you think of the color green. It's not dark green, it's not light green, it's just green. It's 100% superwash merino wool, so it will be nice and warm and easy to care for. My next work in progress is a self-drafted pattern. This is going to be a beanie for my brother's girlfriend. This is a Tunisian crochet beanie that I think I talked about in my last podcast episode, so I'll insert a photo of what the finished one looks like. Hopefully I get the gauge right on this one, because so far one that I made was too big and the second one that I made was too small, so hopefully this one's just right. But yeah, this is just going to be a Tunisian crochet 2-colored beanie that hopefully I will write a pattern for when I'm done with this one. So if you want to make it, you can make it. Although I feel like Tunisian crochet is, of crochet, knitting, and Tunisian crochet, the least number of people do Tunisian crochet, but maybe this is a little motivation to start Tunisian crochet because it's super fun. It's like a really good blend between knitting and crochet. I'm crocheting this on 6.5 and 6mm hooks. I think my last episode I was debating whether or not I was going to go up hook size or increase the stitch count. I decided to go up hook size. More stitches takes longer. Fewer hooks with fewer stitches takes less time. So yeah, that's how I made that decision. One more whip, and that is something that I was really hoping was going to be a finished object. I think in my last episode I said that I wanted this done by Thanksgiving, and it's now December 27th, so that didn't happen. This is the Front Porch Sweater by Kevin Haggerty. It's an all over cabled sweater. I'm knitting it in Knitting for Olive merino, the fingering weight merino in the color Bordeaux, and the soft silk mohair in the color Claret. I'm getting this beautiful burgundy color. This is my favorite color. If I could have everything in this color, I would. Since my last episode, I think I've finished the ribbing on the bottom and bound it off. I also did the collar and bound it off, and I started a sleeve. The reason though that this doesn't have more progress is because one, I was really busy gift knitting all those other things that I showed you, but also my armholes were too deep, so I needed to think about how I was going to fix that. What I ended up doing was, I don't even think you can tell where I did it, which is pretty good. That's what I wanted to happen. Originally, the armhole went down to here, and I picked up stitches underneath the arm, and then I knit 2 additional cable repeats up, and then I whip stitched it along the sides here to close that up a little bit, and then I picked up stitches for the sleeve, and it just brought the armpit up a little bit higher so that it's not as saggy, because one of my least favorite things in a sweater is when the yoke is so deep and your armpit starts too deep. So that took a while to figure out and then get the motivation to actually try. I didn't like how I did it the first time. I needed an extra selvage stitch to whip stitch everything together. But then I figured it out. And then now I'm working on the sleeve, and I knew going into this pattern that I wasn't going to follow the sleeve decreases exactly, because I like a wider sleeve at the end, and the sleeve is pretty tapered in the pattern. But the way that the decreases are explained, I've read it so many times and I still can't figure it out. So I'm kind of just doing my own decreases. I'm just going to make it up myself. I've looked at photos of other people who've made this sweater, and I really like that the line, like the line underneath the arm, I'll insert a photo so you can see what I'm talking about. The line underneath the arm follows, like remains, and the cables disappear into that line. That's the type of decrease that I would like to do. So that's what I'm going to do. I knit 4 cable repeats there, and now I'm starting the decreases, but I'm only decreasing 1 stitch every cable repeat for now. And then once I get to my elbow, I think I'm going to decrease a little bit more rapidly before I get to the wrist. That's my plan for right now. We'll see if that changes. But the fact that I had to figure out my own decreases for the sleeve was also a little bit of a deterrent. Now that I've settled on a decision though, I think it's going to go a little faster. I knit pretty much this whole sleeve so far yesterday. My front porch sweater. I really can't wait for this one to be done. I thought I was going to be done by Thanksgiving, and then I wasn't, and then I was like, okay, I'll be done by Christmas / Hanukkah so I can wear it to holiday parties. And then I wasn't, so now it's just, I just want to get it done in whatever time frame I get it done. Those are all my whips. Let's move on to acquisitions. My first acquisition is very exciting. This was a gift from Max for Hanukkah, and it is a set of chaiogoo needles. So exciting. I know everybody knits with these, everybody loves them, and now that I've knit with them for a little bit, like I knit Broad Street Beanie with the chaiogoo, yeah, I like them a lot. I also knit like when I re-knit the crown of this Broad Street Beanie, I knit it on chaiogoo needles, and knitting acrylic with metal needles. My needles are the Clover Takumi bamboo interchangeables, which I love, would still highly recommend. Love, think they're a great bamboo needle. But knitting acrylic on bamboo feels so much different than knitting acrylic on metal needles, and knitting this acrylic yarn with the metal needles was such an enjoyable experience. And honestly, I couldn't tell a difference between this and wool until then. Actually, I knit this one, which was 100% wool. So wool still feels better, but acrylic feels, if you're comparing metal needles on acrylic versus wool, the wool feels better. But if you're comparing acrylic yarn on metal versus wooden, the metal needles feel better. So I will definitely use metal needles whenever I knit acrylic in the future. Because I've been knitting so many Broad Street Beanies, I just keep my 4mm needles attached to the cord, because one thing that's not so nice about the chaiogoo needles that is also nice at the same time is that you need to tighten it down with a little key locking thing. So it's really hard to take off. Like my Clover Takumi, you can just unscrew. But the flip side of that is that the Clover Takumi sometimes come unscrewed while you're knitting. And so far my chaiogoo have never come undone while I'm knitting. So that is nice. But I just left the cord on there because I've been knitting a lot of hats on those needles. So yeah, I got the smaller half of this set. It does have room for all the larger size needles, but I asked specifically for these, just the smaller ones, because I haven't knit anything on larger than 5.5mm needles, and I have larger needles in my Clover Takumi bamboo set. So if I need them, I have them. I didn't feel like I needed the full chaiogoo set because I use these sizes most often anyway. And I also specifically got the 4-inch long tips because that's how long my Clover Takumi tips are. And I really love that you can get away with knitting sleeves in the round much longer. Like they accommodate a shorter circumference than a 5-inch tip, which I think is standard. So yeah, I got the 4-inch tip, small size chaiogoo needles. And these all work with the size small cord. So chaiogoo needles, there's like a mini, a small, and a large cord. These all work with the small cord. And then over the summer or last spring, I actually bought these chaiogoo needles, which are in 2mm and 2.5mm. And these go with the mini cords. The reason that I bought these was because I knit my 7 p.m. tank on those needles. So now I just keep those right here in this set, even though they fall out pretty easily. I need to figure out a better storage solution. But yeah, I really like this case too. I like that it's soft fabric like this, and I like that it zips up. I like everything about it, pretty much. My next acquisition is this boucle yarn, and I have plans for this. This is Drops Alpaca Boucle, which is 80% alpaca, 15% wool, 5% polyamide. And I got it in this light tan color and this light gray color because my mom really wants a pillowcases for my room, which I'm in right now, and my brother's room, which is also now a guest room. She wants like a boucle pillow, accent pillow. So right now she has this pillow in here, but she'd like a boucle pillow instead. And I was like, I can make that because anything that's knit, I think I could make that. I'm not planning to follow pattern. I'm just gonna knit a tube. I bought pillows that are actually smaller than this pillow. I think that they only go to like here. I'm gonna hold the yarn double on big needles, so hopefully it won't take too long. And then just sew up the sides around the pillow. Because it's an accent pillow, it doesn't need to be able to be washed. And if it does, then I'll cross that bridge when we get there. Yeah, I'm excited to work with this yarn though, because I found that I'm less sensitive to alpaca than I am to wool. So if this is not itchy for me, then I definitely want to knit like a beanie or a scarf or a sweater out of Drops Alpaca Boucle because it's super affordable. I think it's $4 for 50 grams. Much more affordable than a lot of other boucle yarn. And I got it on Wool Warehouse, which is where I get all my Drops yarn. because they ship very reasonably priced to the US. I also get my Cascade yarn on Wool Warehouse. Even though Cascade is a US company, it's cheaper for me to get it shipped from England than it is for me to buy it here in the US, just based on where I live, which is not so good to be spending less money to ship it around the world. I digress. That's a problem for another time. My last acquisition is a really, really, really special, exciting thing. Universal Yarn reached out to me and they asked if they could send me some yarn to try, a bunch of different fibers. And they also asked if I would make content for them. So this is a moment that I was hoping for when I started my social media, that I would be able to work with brands like this and work with their yarn and make content with them. And this is a brand that I really admire and I really like their content. There's been a couple other brands that reached out that I wasn't super vibing with their style, specifically their content style or their general things that they like to promote. But Universal Yarn, I feel like I really align with. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of you who are subscribed here on YouTube and who watch my videos or who follow me on Instagram or TikTok, who interact with any of my content, because it's because of you that I have opportunities like this. And it's definitely not lost on me how insanely cool this is and how a yarn company wants to send me yarn. Like, what? Universal Yarn didn't ask me to include this section or like in any of their yarn in my YouTube videos. So this is purely because I want to show you what they sent me, but it is kind of an ad in the sense that they sent me the yarn for free. So yeah, they came in this beautiful box and their slogan is knit, relax, smile, repeat. How amazing is that? That's what I want to do every single day. Knit, relax, smile, repeat. With this beautiful wrapping paper. And it says, say hello to your new favorite yarn. I will say I've already looked at this yarn. I've recorded a whole video of my initial reactions to this yarn. I will say I do think that some of this is my new favorite yarn. This is everything they sent me. Sorry, the wrapping paper is probably so loud. I have dedicated videos to going over each of the yarns in depth, so I'm just gonna do a brief overview. But first, they sent me this cute little sticker. I love a sticker. Sticker is always appreciated. And this tape measure, which I am always looking for a tape measure. I have one tape measure that's like this from Monarch Knitting, which is a yarn store in Monterey. But I love a tape measure like this that pulls out, it stays out, and then it has a little button on the back and it gets all sucked up. The best tape measure. Yes, will definitely 100% be used for as long as I frickin' can. Before I start, I just want to say I'm gonna link all these yarns and the colors that they sent me in the description. So if you want to buy any of them, you can. I do have an affiliate link, which is pretty cool. This is my first affiliate link. If you'd like to support me, you can use the link in the description. First is the Uptown Worsted. It's a worsted weight 100% acrylic yarn, and I'm planning to make a Broad Street beanie out of this. This is 100 grams. So hopefully I can get a beanie out of that. They also sent Fashion Modern Tweed, which is an Aran weight yarn. I think this is 60% wool, 20% polyamide, 20% viscose. Beautiful blue tweedy yarn. So soft. Very soft, just from my initial squishiness of the skein. They also sent this Mystical Marl, which is 50% acrylic, 50% cotton in this beautiful heathered marled color. It's 50% specifically anti-pilling acrylic, which is super cool because one of the downsides of acrylic is that it tends to pill quite easily. As somebody with a wool sensitivity, this is one of the most exciting things I've received, because for it to be acrylic cotton, it's definitely going to be okay on my skin. This is exciting. I've never tried Rico yarn before. Sorry. The Fashion Modern Tweed is Rico yarn, not Universal Yarn, but Universal Yarn is a distributor of Rico, I think. I've never tried Rico, but I'm very excited to try it now because I've heard amazing things. I've also heard amazing things about Universal yarn. And this is also Rico's yarn. Essentials Soft Merino in this beautiful burgundy berry color. This is 100% superwash wool and it's so soft. I also got a skein of bamboo pop sock. Look at how cool this is. I really want to knit a pair of socks. I've yet to knit a pair of socks. It's the one category that I haven't knit anything in yet. This is pretty special sock yarn. It's 55% bamboo, 37% cotton, 8% PBT. I think PBT is a type of acrylic, but it's not like a wool sock. It's a bamboo cotton sock, which is pretty cool. And it's so soft. So I'm thinking if I don't knit a sock out of this, I would really love to knit a shawl scarf of some sort because it's definitely okay next to my neck. This is a fingering weight, 100 grams, 450 meters. And the last thing they sent me was Universal Yarn Dunescape in this beautiful green color. This is 57% cotton, 30% viscose, 13% linen. So it's a great summer fiber, but also a great fiber if you are sensitive to wool, like I am. Thank you, Universal Yarn. I think that's enough talking for right now. I really want to know what you're working on, so leave a comment, let me know what you're working on while you're watching this video. Even if you're watching this video months in the future, like it's no longer December 2024 and you're watching this video, I want to know what you're working on. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me, maybe consider subscribing. Thank you so much if you made it all the way to the end of this video. I really appreciate you being here. I'll see you in the next one.